Welcome to Business Next, news and views on the latest developments of importance to Michigan's small business owners. Business Next is produced by the Small Business Association of Michigan. Your host is SBAM's Vice President for Communications, Michael Rogers.
Thanks very much. Here on Business Next, my guests and I share tips and advice on how you can become more profitable and successful in your small business operation. There's an archive of previous shows that you can listen to on all kinds of great topics, like managing your finances and handling your employees. Listen to these recordings anytime at your convenience over your PC or mobile device by going to sbam.org/radio. And you can get online alerts when new shows are available by liking our Facebook page and by following me on Twitter, MW Rogers, that's MWROGERS on Twitter. Today in Business Next, I welcome back to the show a Michigan-based keynote speaker and trainer, Paul Artale.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me back.
Well, an appropriate topic for the new year as everybody's finishing up with remembering and reminiscing about the holidays, and they're kind of really digging back into the business of making their small enterprises thrive and prosper. We'll talk about work-life balance. Why is it important to have balance between your work life and the rest of what goes on?
Well, it's important for two reasons, really. But I think first is it's really about finding the joy in our lives, and when we have joy, and when the joy is balanced, then we're more productive, and we're just leading much more productive lives. I think the term work-life balance is a little misleading at times. So I think we always think things are going to come, 50% work, 50% life, and everything's just going to mesh together, and that's just not really the way it goes. So to me, work-life balance is important because it comes there. For me, work-life balance is important because it's really about finding a system that works for you, finding a balance, and it could be 60-40, it could be 70-30, that brings joy to your life, that makes your life exciting, makes you want to get up in the morning and go to work, and also makes you want to enjoy coming home and doing the things you love. Because ultimately, it's hard to argue these days that work and life don't mesh to some degree, because if we have a bad day at work, it's going to spill over into our lives. And if we have something going on in our personal life, let's just say something as simple as a loved one being sick, that's definitely going to be spilling over into our work environment. So it's really important that we have a life situation that allows us to be in a really positive space so we can get the most out of both our work and our personal lives.
Paul, being a former small business owner myself and having talked to thousands of small business owners over the years, I think a serious issue for many entrepreneurs is the fact that their small business becomes their life. There is really no work-life balance. It's all work. So that makes it a challenge to, as you say, really find that sweet spot where you're concentrating on work when you need to, but you're also leaving time in your life for the other things that make life joyous and enjoyable.
That's a good point. Ultimately, you have to some degree, you have to carve out the time. I understand you're always working, and it seems like you never have time for the other things. My entire family essentially are all small business entrepreneurs, and my father ran his own. He manufactured tow trucks for a living as a child, and so I know what that mentality is like. I know that when you're running your own business, that you're the one that's running it. So if you don't go to work, nobody's making money, nothing's happening half the time, and so I understand that it's easy to get stuck in that trap, and sometimes it's necessary. But we have to carve out some time for ourselves to help the other domains in our lives, and it's not just time with family. It's time sometimes for things like exercise and a hobby, and even if it's only 30 minutes a day, we really have to make time for that, because you have to look at the long-term picture, and you have to look at the long-term you, and you don't want to burn yourself out to a point where your business might not do as well as it's going to do, or you're not going to be as fresh. And we know that when we're stressed out, we're not as creative, and we know that when we're stressed out, we're typically not as productive. And so it can be negative aspects to just sort of focusing on one area of our life.
For a small employer, the challenge, of course, amongst with all the other challenges that come from trying to run a successful business, is imparting the passion that you feel for your business operation, imparting that to your employees. And it's difficult, I would think, to help them understand that the fact that you're willing to put 80 hours or 100 hours a week into your business, it's difficult for maybe the entrepreneur to understand that the employee needs extra education and motivation to understand why he or she may need to also be that motivated.
That's always a challenge. I think as a small business owner, particularly when most small business owners, they started from the ground up. There's this, it's like having a baby, right? It's your thing, and imparting that to an employee can be difficult. I think it really, to some degree, comes down to you have to recruit people that share a passion for your business.
I am talking with Paul Artale, keynote speaker and trainer based here in Michigan. We're talking about work-life balance. We're going to take a break and then come back and get some more of his suggestions right after this. You're listening to Business Next, a part of the Michigan Business Network. Welcome back to Business Next and my conversation with keynote speaker and trainer Paul Artale. We're talking with him about work-life balance in the new year. Paul, you've written on your blog about something that's called results-oriented work environments, ROWE, and you suggest that this can be a way to address this whole question of work-life balance. So tell us more about ROWE.
Well, results-oriented work environments are very goal-focused. So essentially what they say, workplaces that use them, they say to their employees, here are your tangible goals that management sets out for you. It's your job to get them done by this date. Here are your numbers. Go out and do it. And outside of maybe commitments, let's say there's a Monday morning meeting or whatever that you can't telecommute for, but outside of that, you can go and do that as much as you want. So if you want to go to work and put in an 18-hour day, that's your choice. But if you want to telecommute from home, you can. If you want to go to the Bahamas for 3 days and come back, it says you're an adult, get the job done. You know how to do it, and it's seen some interesting results. A couple of companies have used it. I'm still reading this. This is fairly new in my repertoire, but I know Best Buy has used it. The Gap has used it. Girl Scouts of California has used it, and a few other businesses have started to use it. And it's really interesting to see that, generally speaking, it's been fairly successful.
Is this really applicable to a small business where most of your employees are hourly, where they've got to punch a time clock to get paid per hour?
That would be difficult. I think without getting into labor laws, but it could be if I guess you turn it into more of a piecemeal, right, and say, well, get it done. I'll give you 16 hours, 40 hours. It could be. It definitely. I'll be honest and say it does suit the salaried employee a little bit more, but there's no reason why you couldn't apply it on an hourly rate at some level, or at least even build in, I guess, some flex to say that if you need to take a few hours off, to go do something, or you want to telecommute, we can give you the hours, X amount of hours for the work. I mean, I think some things can be negotiated, but definitely easier with salaried employees.
Well, it certainly sounds like an interesting concept, and there's no doubt that it has potential for helping to make the workforce more motivated and productive. So, Paul, where do you start if you're a small employer, if you're thinking about taking a look at the ROWE concept? How do you kind of get started off on getting that off on the right foot?
Well, there's a few things you can do. Well, number one, I think if it's going to be experimental in the beginning, so I think you need to pick something that's don't apply it maybe to your biggest project or your most important employees or department or whatever. Pick a project and test it with something. Beta test it, because there's going to be bugs in the beginning. There is, to be fully honest, anytime you go into a more flexible work environment, there's always going to be a learning curve, and there's always going to be some tension that happens because of that, because it's just a different way of doing things. So I'd say pick a project, test it out with an employer or two, and see how it works, and make sure that you're communicating your goals and your expectations very clearly up front. so that there's as little miscommunication as possible. So I think that's the first thing you do. The other thing you could do, you could always bring in a consultant, or ask someone to sort of take a look at an outside set of eyes, see if it's appropriate for you to be using the results-oriented work environment for that particular project, or to convert it. And I think also it would help to start looking at other companies that are doing that type of thing. I think the tech sector is good. I think a lot. Google's always like the company that gets quoted as doing this type of stuff, but companies that sort of think outside the box might also have some really good ideas, because they've been doing this in some form for a long time. So I think it helps to look at some outside resources as well.
I bet that it would take a substantial degree of trust between the business owner and the employees. Trust that your employee is going to accomplish the task, regardless of the amount of time it takes, and trust by the employee that the employer is going to believe that they're an effective employee because they did the task, rather than simply counted up the number of hours of face time in the office.
Well, and that's the paradigm shift that needs to happen, right? I think there's this misconception that face time in an office equals productivity, and that's not necessarily the case. Just because someone's physically present in your office doesn't mean that you're getting, let's say, 8 hours of solid quality work out of them. And so there is definitely a level of trust. And again, the beta test is really good to put that in there. But at some point you have to trust your employees to perform, and I think that's what Row is based on. It's based on having quality people and letting quality people do quality work in a way that suits them. So for some of your employees, it actually still might mean the face time in the office all the time, because some people are far more productive that way. But for others, it might mean a little bit of trust and letting them be flexible and seeing how it works out. And I think if you want to be more productive, or maybe you're feeling that the energy of your company is just not where it needs to be, or that you're not even getting the most out of your employees, give it a try. And even before you give it a try, you asked what should a small business owner do if they're considering this. And I forgot to mention, talk to some of your employees and see if they would want to do that, because there's an assumption that maybe this is great and everybody wants to do it, but in some environments it might not work. And so, but I think just having that conversation about how you can be more results-oriented versus time clock-oriented, and I think time clock-oriented has a lot of potential damaging effects from a work-life perspective. So, but to be more results-oriented and empowering your staff on some level to get it done, however that looks like, I think that is going to be a huge benefit to any business owner.
I'm having a great conversation with Michigan-based keynote speaker and trainer Paul Artale. We're talking about work-life balance in the new year. Back with more from Paul right after this. You're listening to Business Next, a part of the Michigan Business Network. Welcome back to Business Next, my conversation with Mid-Michigan-based keynote speaker and trainer Paul Artale. He has some great suggestions on work-life balance in the new year. Paul, what are some other practical suggestions you might have for a small business owner to try to make their work-life balance really work for them here in 2014?
Well, there's a few things you can do. I think whenever I do a work-life presentation, the first question I always ask people is, what is it that they want their life to look like? And I think it seems kind of like a touchy-feely, floofy question, but I think it's important, because I can't help people balance and calibrate their lives properly if they don't know what their life wants to look like. And so as a small business owner, I think you have to ask yourself that. What do you want? Do you want flexibility? Do you not? Do you want to be committed to your job all the time? Some people love that. Like I said, my father loved to work. That was his joy, and that was where he spent a lot of his time. So they got to ask themselves and answer the question, what do they want their life to look like? And to help them do that, there's a quick exercise that we can do, and I love this exercise. I think it's good if we all do it every couple of months for ourselves, but it's basically to analyze your time. So take a week's worth of what you've done, everything from eating, sleeping, driving, Twittering, Facebooking, whatever, and just start writing down the amount of time you spent every day on each of these different categories in your life. And make sure it's a typical week, and over the course of the week, and then once the week is over, add up your hours and start looking at where all your time is spent, and do a nice little pie graph, a chart, or something like that. And then when you do that, you can start to see where your time is being spent, and a lot of times you can see also where maybe time is not being spent efficiently, or where you could cut certain things out to make time for the things you want to do, or hobbies or sleep. So that's what the time analysis tool is really, really good to do it. I think it's a good check, and it also leads into that first question: what is you want your life to look like? So you can sort of look at what your life is like and where you want it to be based on that. For those that want to know a little bit more about themselves, there's a work-life personality test that I administer when I do seminars with companies and individuals, and just like some of us, we've all taken the Myers-Briggs or True Colors or all those types of inventories. Well, there's ones for work-life balance, and it'll pretty much tell you: are you an integrator? That means you like to integrate and blend your work and your life. Are you a separator? So do you like to have work is here and life is over in another compartment? You don't like the two to mix. Or are you what they call a voleur, which is someone who you can shift. If personal life deserves a lot more time, you can do that in the short term, knowing that you'll even it out with work. So there's a personality test you can do that'll help you understand sort of how you process things and how you understand work and life. And I think that can be a helpful tool. It's a great team building tool also for companies, because then you can see what other people's work lifestyles are, and then that can also help break down some of the tensions in your life and in your company.
For a small business owner, again, I remember when my wife and I owned our small business, one of the challenges is that the problems that you have in your business, the challenges of trying to make it successful and profitable, can overwhelm any attempts to kind of control your time. The small business can be kind of a monster that consumes every waking hour, and so how do you take control of that kind of situation and really try to craft your life so you're achieving what you want in terms of work-life balance?
I think we touched on that a little bit today. I think number one, your key word to use there is craft. So if you're crafting your life, it means you're building it. To some degree, you have the power to control some things. And again, it's where the analysis part comes in, the reflection part comes in to say, what can I tweak or what can I alter to sort of take me closer to that life that I wanted? I think that's really an important step. We talked about trust. At some point, you have to trust employees or other business owners. A lot of family-based businesses in my family. So usually it's, I'll go on vacation and my brother Bill, my brother John, who's also my partner, is going to watch the shop kind of deal. But it comes down to that. At some point, you have to build a business that you can leave or step away from on some level, so that you can carve out, whether it's a vacation time or just those few hours a day, that you can let things be and put them in capable hands. So I think that's a goal. I think as a small business owner, if you don't have that number two, that person you can trust for X amount of time, I think that needs to be a tangible goal to move towards, which I know some people are going, yeah, that's easier said than done. I understand that, but you still have to go for it, because otherwise it's going to be more of the same of you being the workhorse and doing it all, and that's long term not a great place to be. So I think those are the key elements, and ultimately you're the architect of your own life. One of my catchphrases is create your plate, and I use the whole analogy of a plate instead of a work-life scale, and I say that it's like going to a buffet. You put what you want on your plate, and you can blend it all together. You can throw it on. You can have a lot. You can have a little bit. As a small business owner, the beauty to some degree is that you have some power to control what you want things to look like, and so I think you need to remember that in the back of your head at all times.
Paul Artale is a keynote speaker and trainer. We're talking work-life balance in the new year. Back with more from Paul right after this. You're listening to Business Next, a part of the Michigan Business Network.